Joining me tonight is a fellow veteran who has written a superb book called Niche Wars that documents Australia's military history this century and our commitments to global security as part of the US alliance. Joining me is one of our favourites, Professor John Blaxland. John, welcome.
Thanks for having me on the program again, Catherine.
It's a joy to have you back on a sombre day, but I think we all saw this day coming, and I've talked far too much already, but I made the observation that in my view, it doesn't discredit us to be a staunch US ally. Our global security commitments have always been defined by being aligned with the dominant maritime power of the day, from the Great Britain right through to the United States. That's valid. But at the operational level of war, what we did in Afghanistan let down the men we deployed, in my opinion.
Yeah, sadly so, Catherine. We refused to really buy in on formulating the strategy. And without a clear and compelling strategy, you're really beating against the wind. And Australia, basically took a fairly cynical approach to our engagement in Afghanistan. You remember when I was working with you a number of years ago, while we were writing about revisiting counterinsurgency and the idea that you could actually want to holistically approach a problem and manage it with a view to success.
Absolutely.
And it was demoralising and very disappointing to see leadership that were too cynical by half, too clever by half, in trying to measure our engagement, to pull our punches and to only put a profile that was going to be politically palatable, but not put us in a position where we could actually generate the necessary effects in the long run. And part of that was, of course, that the whole strategy for Afghanistan was flawed. And we never really sought to buy in on that. We left that to the Americans. And of course, God bless them, but they have a bad track record of not thinking through their strategy properly. Both in Vietnam, Korea, and elsewhere. And of course, we've seen that in Iraq and Afghanistan. As much as we wanted to support them and encourage them, there's $2 trillion worth of investment in a failed enterprise. $2 trillion that perhaps could have been spent on redeveloping the United States and maybe building an alternative to the BRI.
And on the point about counterinsurgency strategy, in my view, it was always flawed when we had these discussions. I know our mate David Kilcullen got close to betray us, but I made a point after reading about the Russian experience there. These people weren't for sale.
No.
Counterinsurgency was an anti-colonial movement tactic that was designed by David Galula, the French counterinsurgency expert in the Moroccan, Algerian war rather. These people were highly motivated and were people of faith and deep belief, and they weren't for sale. So building them a road, they'd just use the road to come and kill us. Is that a fair point?
It is, and part of the issue is that we went in initially to get Al-Qaeda, and we kind of did that, but we didn't finish the job. Donald Rumsfeld was keen to use special forces and demonstrate an economy and utility of force. He would commit the 10th Mountain Division to put a blocking force to make sure that they really got them in the Tora Bora Mountains. And of course, they then escaped, and then it went on, and then they reinvented the whole strategy. It wasn't about getting Al-Qaeda. It was about democratic reform and reconstituting the nation. But Afghanistan's not a unitary state. And they tried to impose this unitary model on the country when the Pashto, the Dari, the various other linguistic and cultural groups from the north, from the south, were actually not in a position to be represented appropriately. It fed corruption, and then in the meantime, the United States led the way, but we happily followed into Iraq at a critical juncture when the situation in Afghanistan was actually tipping. So we all dropped the ball on that. We followed the United States. And look, there's actually a really important point for the present, because I know it's very upsetting to look back and think about what happened. And we need to learn from this as a nation. And, you and I are both strong supporters of our alliance with the United States. But we're now at a juncture where the United States actually needs some help. It needs to be thinking through what the future might hold. And we need to be thinking for ourselves. We haven't done that properly in the past. We've let the Americans take the lead in doing the thinking, and it hasn't ended up being all that constructive. So we're now facing a predicament in our neck of the woods where we do need to think more heavily. We do need to think about the lessons from Afghanistan and Iraq. And one of the key lessons, I think, is that we in Australia need to buy in on formulating the strategy.
And on that note, we'll take the quad forward at our next chat, because I think you've made a vital point to close on.